There's a certain kind of intelligence people admire. High grades, fast learners, quick thinkers. And then there's the other kind. The kind that makes you pause. The kind that makes you uncomfortable. Not because it's loud or arrogant, but because it works quietly, effortlessly, and sometimes without empathy. Tonight, these are real stories from real people answering one simple question. What's the creepiest display of intelligence you've ever seen? Some of these people were brilliant, some were terrifying, and some were both at the same time. This is Reddit Echoes. Story 1. I used to work retail, and for a while there was this guy on our team who seemed completely normal, friendly, quiet, polite to customers, the kind of coworker you wouldn't think twice about leaving alone at the register. Later, we found out he had a talent, a really disturbing one. He could memorize credit card numbers. Not just the last 4 digits, the entire thing. Card number, expiration date, security code, one glance, one transaction, and it was just there, stored. At first, no one noticed anything was wrong. Customers weren't complaining, no alarms, no obvious fraud reports tied back to the store. Because he was smart about it. He didn't drain accounts, he didn't buy anything flashy, just small purchases here and there, spread out over time, mostly adult content, subscriptions, digital stuff, things people might be embarrassed to admit they paid for or wouldn't bother disputing. It went on for months. The creepiest part wasn't even the crime, it was how effortless it was for him. He didn't write anything down, never took photos, never used a skimmer. There was no evidence, because the evidence was his brain. Eventually, a pattern showed up. Enough customers complained, and the investigation traced everything back to our location, then to his shifts, then to him. When they confronted him, he didn't panic, didn't deny it. He just explained it, like it was obvious. Like, yeah, I remember numbers. Doesn't everyone? I remember standing there thinking about how many times I'd watched him casually hand a card back to someone, smile, wish them a nice day, while quietly walking away with enough information to steal from them whenever he felt like it. And what really messed with me was this thought. If he'd chosen to do something worse, if he'd aimed higher, if he'd never gotten sloppy, we never would have known. It wasn't some criminal mastermind hiding in the shadows. It was a guy folding receipts, making small talk, and remembering everything you thought was private. And ever since then, every time someone takes my card and looks at it just a second too long, yeah, I don't like that feeling anymore.
Story 2. The Manual. I had a friend once who showed me something I still don't quite know how to feel about. He said it casually, like it was no big deal. Hey, want to see something interesting? Then he pulled out a notebook. At first, I thought it was just random notes, but as I flipped through it, I realized it was about his girlfriend. Not poems, not love letters, data, pages and pages of it. Her likes, her dislikes, what gifts he gave her, and exactly how she reacted. What tone of voice worked, which phrases calmed her down, which ones made things worse. He had charts, actual charts. If she was upset about this, then doing that would usually result in this response, unless she'd had a bad day at work, in which case, do something else. He even had notes on how long it usually took for her to cool off. I asked him why he did this. He shrugged and said it just made things easier. If she feels unloved, I know what fixes it. If she's mad, I know how to diffuse it. That way I can get back to whatever I was doing. He didn't say it cruelly. He didn't sound angry. He sounded efficient. And that's what messed with me, because part of it was almost sweet. He paid attention. He remembered things. He didn't want her to be upset, but another part of it felt wrong, like he wasn't in a relationship. He was running a system. Like her emotions were variables in an equation. I remember thinking, is this love or is this control? When I brought it up later, he seemed genuinely confused. He didn't think he was manipulating her. This is just how I understand people, he said. And maybe that was true, but I couldn't shake the image of that notebook, All those emotions, all those reactions, reduced to if-then statements. Sometimes I imagine them breaking up one day, and weeks later, her new boyfriend gets an email. Short, polite, "I hear you're dating her. I wish you the best." Attached is a PDF titled "Things That Work." And honestly, I don't know whether to call that brilliant or terrifying. Story 3. My sister isn't normal. I don't say that to be mean. I say it because I genuinely don't have a better word for it. My sister is different. The first time it really hit me was over something stupid. Our dishwasher broke. Most people would sigh, maybe Google it, maybe call a repair guy. She watched a 10-minute YouTube video. 10 minutes later, she knew what was wrong. Not just that it was broken, but why it broke, how it broke, and what part failed. She said if the part was in stock at Lowe's, she'd have it fixed in half an hour. She wasn't guessing. She was confident, and she was right. That kind of thing just kept happening. Your car makes a weird noise, she'll get you on FaceTime, tell you to pop the hood, start the engine, listen for about 5 seconds, then say, "Yeah, that's the issue." Then she'll casually send you estimates from 3 different local shops like she's been planning this all day. Someone mentions some random archaeological discovery in a news headline, she's already read the journal article. Not just read it, she'll explain how it connects to a dig in Chile from the 1980s and why it validates a theory everyone thought was wrong. And I'm standing there thinking, since when do you know about fossils? Complicated Thai recipe she's never tried before? She'll glance at it twice, disappear into the kitchen, and come back with something you could serve in a restaurant. She remembers birthdays no one else remembers. Not just close family, your coworker's sister's boyfriend. And she remembers he likes chocolate sprinkles but not rainbow ones. She can walk up to a feral dog, calm it down, get it eating out of her hand, give it a bath, and then casually mention what's probably wrong with its back leg from 10 paces away. You can ask her anything. Welding, preserving an old dress from great-grandma's attic, weird bugs on your potato plants? Of course she knows. Her bosses keep trying to promote her, but she always turns it down, says it'll cut into her jam-making time or something like that. Meanwhile, everyone at work goes to her first when something breaks or when they're stuck, because when she speaks, people listen, and they listen the first time. Her husband once told me he watched her ask the general manager what flavor of stupid he ate for breakfast that morning. The manager apologized. And the wildest part? She insists she's not that smart. She just says she has a good memory. Maybe she's right. All I know is, it's incredibly convenient having her on my side. But if she ever decides to take over the world, yeah, we're all absolutely screwed.
Story 4. He knew me before I knew him. I saw it happen up close, and I still don't fully understand how someone's brain can work like this. I was working with the police at the time, and this guy, I'll call him Dave, had just joined our team. He'd come from one of those investigation units people don't really talk about, the kind that makes you stop asking questions. One night, we were enforcing a weapons stop in an area known for gang violence. Tensions were high. Everyone was on edge. We stopped 2 guys on the side of the street. It took about 2 minutes to realize they weren't involved in anything. No weapons, no attitude, just 2 guys in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we chatted a bit and were about to let them go. That's when Dave smiled and said, really casually, "I think I know you." One of the guys laughed it off, said he'd never been arrested, never been in trouble, clean record, mid-30s, normal life. Dave tilted his head slightly. "No," he said, "I definitely know you." Then he asked if he could get a better look at him. At this point, I felt incredibly awkward. The guy was being polite, but I could tell he was confused, maybe even a little uncomfortable. Dave looked at him for a few seconds. Then he said his full name, correctly, then his date of birth, then his old address, then his mother's name and her date of birth, and finally his father's name and details. The guy went pale. So did I. Dave calmly explained that 22 years earlier, he'd been called to that man's house when he was still a kid. His parents had been arguing. His dad was drunk. Minor incident, breach of the peace, nothing serious. But Dave remembered everything. Not only that, he had recognized this man from when he was a child, mentally aged him forward, and recalled every detail of a case that barely mattered from over 2 decades ago. The guy nodded slowly, clearly shaken, and confirmed everything was true. We let them go after that. As they walked away, I just stared at Dave. That's when it hit me why he'd been in those high-level units. Because intelligence like that isn't loud. It doesn't show off. It just watches you and remembers everything.
Story 6. She knew one was missing. I met her when I was in med school, but this had nothing to do with medicine. She'd worked in the same pharmacy her entire adult life, decades of the same routine, same shelves, same bottles. One day, she picked up a sealed container of ibuprofen, brand new, supposed to have 100 pills. She didn't open it. She just looked at it, frowned. Then she said, "That's wrong." Everyone else laughed it off. Someone joked that maybe it felt lighter. Someone else said the manufacturer probably messed up the label. She opened it anyway and counted. 99 pills, 1 missing. I remember just staring at her, waiting for the trick. Maybe she'd waited. Maybe she'd counted bottles like this 1,000 times. But she hadn't. She said she could just tell. That years of doing the same thing had trained her brain to notice when something was off, even by the tiniest margin, like a song played half a beat too slow. What stuck with me wasn't the missing pill. It was the idea that her mind had recalibrated reality so precisely that normal had become measurable without numbers. She smiled when we reacted, a little embarrassed, like she hadn't realized that wasn't something everyone could do. And that's when it hit me. Some people don't look like geniuses. They just quietly know when the world is wrong. By 1 pill. Story 7. The Linguist. I met him in the military during a language program that was already designed to break people. 9 months to learn collegiate-level German, reading, writing, speaking. High failure rate. We started with 15 people. Only 6 of us graduated. I barely made it. He, on the other hand, was on a completely different planet. He was this painfully normal-looking white kid from Indiana. No accent, no dramatic backstory, the kind of guy you'd expect to talk about the weather. Except he'd already tested out of Spanish and Portuguese before the course even started. Not just basic fluency, full command, dialects and all. Spain, Mexico, Brazil, Portugal. He could switch between them without thinking. So the school just kept throwing languages at him. He figured that out pretty quickly and stopped rushing, took his time, let everyone else catch up. Halfway through German, he turned in a science fiction story he'd written. In German, not a translation, an original book. That alone would have been enough to terrify me. But then they moved him to Arabic, then Farsi. Each of those is normally a 1 to 2 year program. They did them back to back. While the rest of us were drowning in homework, 4 hours a night minimum, this guy was quietly writing books in languages he'd learned months earlier. No one even knew he was doing it. We were friends, so I finally asked him how. He said his favorite method was taking songs he already knew in English and translating them into the new language, but not word for word. He learned how people would say it, their rhythm, their culture, their shortcuts. How he figured that out so fast, I have no idea. He told me he'd picked up some Spanish working construction after high school, liked the idea of being a linguist, just never really tried before. That was it. No ego, no bragging, just someone who could casually absorb entire languages like the rest of us absorb a tune stuck in our heads. And the creepiest part, if you didn't know what he could do, you'd never notice him at all, which means there are probably more people like him out there, and we'd never know. Story 8. She told me like she was discussing grocery plans. No raised voice, no anger, no hesitation. We were sitting in the living room, and out of nowhere she said she had something she wanted to admit. She explained that over the years, she'd intentionally pushed my friends and family out of my life, not because she hated them, but because if the day ever came when she decided to kill me, she wanted enough time to dispose of my body and leave the country before anyone noticed I was missing. I remember nodding while she talked, like my brain hadn't caught up yet. She said it so practically, so thoughtfully, like it was just
contingency planning. At that point, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I hadn't spoken to my friends or family in almost a year and a half. If I disappeared, they really would have just assumed I was ignoring them. People online later asked what the hell was wrong with her. Here's the part I didn't know back then. We've been divorced for 3 years now. I have full custody of our 3 daughters. She's currently in a mental health facility. She was professionally diagnosed with schizophrenia about 2 years before the divorce. When we first met, she was genuinely kind, sweet, thoughtful, the kind of person you feel lucky to know. But after each pregnancy, her mental health declined fast. The postpartum depression amplified everything: paranoia, delusions, planning. I don't blame her for what she said. Not really. She wasn't evil. She was sick. That doesn't make it less terrifying. It just makes it sadder. Sometimes I think about how close I was to not realizing what was happening, how calmly she laid out a plan that could have ended my life, and how easily intelligence, when mixed with illness, can turn into something dangerous without ever raising its voice. That's the part that still keeps me up at night. What makes these stories stick with me isn't how smart these people were, it's how normal they seemed. No warning signs, no dramatic music, no movie villain monologues, just ordinary people with minds that worked a little too well in ways the rest of us aren't prepared for. So now I'm curious. Which one disturbed you the most? Which one crossed the line from impressive into unsettling? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, the quiet kind that linger in your head long after they're over, subscribe to Reddit Echoes. New stories every day. Thanks for listening.